Hi there, good evening and welcome to our crash course on XAT. So, what's up? What's the latest dope? So, tell me, good evening Ashish, how are you doing? Just testing the sound. So you may have heard a very brief moment of echo, and now we're back. So I welcome you to BYJU'S exam prep channel dedicated to your success as a B school aspirant. We keep on bringing tons of sessions for you throughout the year, especially before the exams, and therefore it is imperative that you subscribe to the channel and you press the bell icon if you haven't done so yet. So my name is Vikrant. I am your personal coach for all things related to English and communication skills. And today we plan to look at the verbal ability and logical reasoning section of the XAT, of the mock XAT that we conducted a little while ago. So those of you who are part of the ecosystem, you know that we had this mock XAT 4. And those of you who are not, you know that we conducted this open XAT. So this is basically a discussion of the English section, the verbal ability and logical reasoning section of the open XAT. And before I dive into the in-depth discussion of the exam, here is a brief overview of what all has been asked in the recent past. You can go ahead and have a look at it, and I'll take a question or two. Good evening, Pravalika. On a very happy new year to you, and of course to everyone else, a very happy new year, guys. How are you doing? Vikram, XAT RCs are seeming way out of league. Vikram, yes. On an average, if I were to compare, I would say that XAT is a relatively tougher exam when it comes to verbal ability and logical reasoning. However, if I talk about the last couple of years, they're more or less at par, where XAT would probably pull ahead slightly in terms of difficulty level for a couple of questions here and there. Otherwise, by and large, still the same. And once again, when something is difficult, it is difficult for everyone. And that is why last year, a score of 8.25 basically meant 80 percentile. If you could reach double digits in XAT, so out of a potential 26 marks, imagine if you reach double digits, that puts you almost in the top 10%. Almost. Right? So I think you shouldn't really worry much. Just go ahead, give your best, and it's only when we've given our best that we are able to sleep well, and that is what counts. Okay, so what I will do is that I will take you through all the questions except maybe the last two passages of the All India Open XAT. And for the last two passages, if you happen to have some query, some concern, some question that bothered you, feel more than free to ask me, and I'd definitely love to dive deeper. So let's go ahead and see. So here is the first question. I'm not going to give you enough time in case it gives you all those. We normally do not face it on YouTube, but we are. Then why is the stream stuck? Saket, yes, we do have sectional cutoff in XAT. So for VA and LR, it is typically 80 percentile, which happens at around a score of 9. Last year, 8.25. So let's dive into this. So the correct answer here was E. Now, why is E the right answer? If you look at it, I'm not very good at fixing things. So I'll basically try and work with elimination today. So one is incorrect, which means option B and C are ruled out. Then why were you so unfriendly with Ravi? You're not unfriendly with, you're friendly with someone, but you are unfriendly to or towards someone. So because 2 is also wrong, A is also ruled out. Now look at D versus E. Both of them have 4 and 6. So you know 4 and 6 are correct. You straight away need to go ahead and check sentence number 5. I prefer tea over coffee. Oh my god, this is a very commonly occurring question. Whenever we use prefer or preferable, we don't use over, we use to. So it should be I prefer tea to coffee. So 5th is incorrect, which means D is also ruled out, and thus the answer should be E. So you noticed we had to evaluate just 3 sentences instead of all the 6, and we could arrive at the right answer. Okay, so 3, 4 and 6 are otherwise grammatically correct. So Mayank, 4th is right. It's the 5th where we happen to have a problem, and here is the next one. So okay, question 1, answer is E. Here is the next one for you. Quite a few questions are from inference. Then there are questions that pertain to strengthening, weakening, logical flaw, assumption. So you definitely need to master assumptions and inferences, and after that every other question type essentially becomes an extension. So what's your take on question 2? So as usual, when it comes to inference questions, what do? We go to every answer choice, we evaluate it on the basis of the information supplied by the paragraph in this case, and we apply one of these 3 labels to every answer choice. And in this case, if you'd notice, A is can't say, B is can't say, D and E are again can't say, whereas C is the only one which is true and therefore is our answer. In case you happen to have any issue with any of these answer choices, feel more than free to ask and I would love to dive in. Okay, here is the next one. So question number 3 on your screen. Another inference one. Can you label all of them and then answer? In case you've attempted mock XAT, you got it wrong and you're still not sure, you want to discuss a particular option with me, please flag it in the chat and I would love to dive deeper. Now, when I look at the options here, I will perhaps call it an easy question. And the reason is, if you look at A, we can label it as false. Look at the last sentence itself, which says the real focus continues to be elsewhere. Let's have a look at B. Ayush. While the stock market response and industry reactions get maximum attention, they are generally sidelined in the budget. Industry reactions are sidelined in the budget. Look at the third line. They are not only in focus before the budget, but also on the day of the budget itself. So big, and then look at the next. The stock market response and industry reactions get the lion's share of attention after the finance minister's budget presentation. So we know that it gets attention after, definitely after. Whether it is sidelined in the budget or not is something that we do not know. So this is something that is ideally can't say, something that you would call cannot be determined, data insufficient sorts. C on the other hand is definitely true. D is once again can't say, and E is false. So easy because two of them were false. So that makes it narrow, that makes it easier for us to choose between the rest. So the best, sorry, I ticked the wrong one. The best is C in that case. So the answer for third is option C. And with that, let me ask you the fourth one. In case you happen to have any issue about punctuations, please ask. While the rest of them are solving the question, just go ahead. If you have any ambiguity, doubt, confusion about any of these punctuation marks, feel more than free to ask it now, or you can join me at 12 tomorrow, where we can sit and talk about punctuations if you so desire. I think once again, I would say it is an easy question for anybody who knows about direct speech, indirect speech. So whenever you quote somebody as it is, you know that whatever that person said has to go inside the quote marks, and A is the only part that had those quote marks. In B, this part is left out of quotes. In C, where is the other part of quote marks, which ideally should have been here? D does not use them all together. E does not use them all together. So on the whole, I'd say an easy question. Should I test your understanding of punctuations tomorrow? Okay, I'll just throw in a question or two tomorrow and then let's see. Let's hope that you deal with it successfully. Okay, so fourth answer is A, as all of you have pointed out. Here is the fifth. Okay, so by now you know how I approach these questions. I start here. So it says weakens the court's view. How do we weaken? There are only two ways through which we can weaken an argument. We can negate, that is disprove the premises or the assumptions involved in an argument, or if not negate, then at least cast doubts on the premises and the assumptions involved. So one very clear assumption here is that when a chief election commissioner has a short tenure, then it becomes difficult for them to perform their job. It may compromise their independence. Otherwise, you cannot arrive at the observation that the court has made in the last sentence. And therefore, when you look at A, it negates the assumption. Therefore, A definitely weakens. Now, because A weakens, I'd be tempted to straight away mark it as an answer, but then E says A and C, which means that I do need to check C as well. C says the member's entire tenure in the EC should be considered, not the duration as CEC. So you notice, once again, the court is looking at it only from the perspective of chief election commissioner, that hey, when you get promoted, if you have a short tenure, there is a problem. But what if? So another assumption here is that it is only when you assume the post as a chief election commission that it matters. But if C is true, then it says that no, it does not even matter. You need to look at the entire tenure of that member, not only as just the CEC, but also as election commissioner. So A and C both question the assumption involved in the argument, and that is why E became the best answer for us. It was easy to rule out B. And D can be used as a counter argument. It is not going to weaken the given argument here. And with that, let me ask you the next question. Here it is. Another inference. So we get a lot of inference based questions. Although last year we got quite a few logical flaw questions as well, which is an extension of assumptions. So be ready for those as well. Arushi, punctuation class. Let me coordinate with the team. Let me check with the team and let's see if I can do that. Should not be much of a hassle. Let's see if we can fit that in. Okay, sixth, E, let us check E. Theories that are counterintuitive are not always incorrect and rationality is not always correct. Now you notice this particular paragraph talks about just one hypothesis. So if you go from one hypothesis and make a claim about all the hypotheses, then that's obviously going to be a generalization, and we know that generalizations are can't say. Saundarya, that actually varies from college to college, so that's strictly the call of a college. So as far as XLRI goes, yes, we do have sectional cutoffs, but then as you go below, you typically see that you either do not have sectional cutoffs, or even if you do have them, they are so low that they become meaningless. So gradually that impact diminishes. Okay, so in this case, the correct answer is A. A is true. C, let's have a look at C, Neeraj. One can gain control over oneself and others by taking a different perception of power and how it operates. Where can it come from in this paragraph? It's just talking about human agency. This is humans do not have power. So nothing in this theory of coaction intends to take power and control away from humans. So it's like when you say this, it is not that you're taking the power away, it is that the fact that when you think of it in terms of coaction, you realize that you do have power, you have more control over outcomes. But then, what do you mean by different perception of power? It's more about a different approach. Coaction. Last part of the paragraph, Neeraj, even if you look at the last part, casting human agency in a more distributive and collective mode will help us to become more genuinely autonomous. This is basically a rephrasing of that part. So that coaction, this collective mode, that is what makes you more autonomous. Basically, as I said, basically rephrases the last sentence. Okay, here is the next one. Question number 7 for you on the screen, a parajumble for you. Okay, now one of the problems that I have seen people is that we spend a lot of time on parajumbles in the CAT. Now when it comes to the CAT, obviously parajumbles are non-MCQ, so you are forced to connect all the sentences together. But in the rest of the exams, including the XAT, these are multiple choice questions, which basically means that instead of using the selection approach, we need to switch over to elimination approach. So I'll just highlight one thing. Look at this. Sentence 4 says NIMBYism, 5th says NIMBYism, and it also tells you what NIMBYism is. So when do you define a term? When it is used for the first time. Subsequently, you merely use it, which basically tells us that 4 has to come after 5. And if you look carefully, you'd realize that there is only one option where 4 comes after 5, and that is B. The moment you find one clue, figure out one sequence, one mandatory pair, there are times when elimination approach helps you rule it out there itself, at that juncture itself. Right? So that's how it really works. And that's how you can be faster in these exams. Here is the next one. Question number 8 on your screen now. I think this was more or less I found this to be more or less an easy one. Although the sentence was difficult to understand. But if you look at just the first blank, 3 themes dash Churchland's philosophical discussion. So 3 themes neglected, approved, defying is grammatically incorrect, had to be predominated. So the first blank itself helped us rule out the other 4. And then you could check, developing an alternative to the logical empiricist theory of intertheoretic reduction. Thereafter it becomes nasty, okay? Responding to property dualistic arguments based on dash and sensory qualia. The deal was and. So, and you notice sensory qualia is the quality that is perceived through our senses, that has to be subjective. It cannot be unbiased. And then, C and D are both nouns. So even they are ruled out. So you could still have narrowed it down to A versus E. So the best answer for 8th consequently was E. Then 9th. Oh, Nandan, I'm sorry, I just saw this repeat. Yeah, you can always play the video again. That's the beauty of working online. It has certain flaws, certain disadvantages, but then this is one huge advantage that you can go through it again. So yet another inference question. Go ahead and tell me what you think is right. In the exam, frankly, in the exam, I will not prioritize a question this long. There is no sectional time limit. So I would focus only on attempting those questions which are easy and less time consuming for me in the exam in that given section. So what I typically do is I would give myself 40 minutes for each one of these sections, where my goal in those 40 minutes is to clear the sectional cutoff at least, and go through, read all the questions in the process. So this question, because it is lengthy, it may not even make the cut in the first round. Etc. can be accessed there very easily. Just go to BYJU'S exam prep app, and you'd have that information. But if you're talking about the overall cutoff of 80 percentile, yeah, there are colleges, but then the question is, should you be joining them? So we need to talk about that. So Mayank, yes, the correct answer is indeed D. The problem with A is that it is not unprecedented, and we cannot make a claim about unlikely to succeed. That probability cannot be arrived at using the paragraph. That unlikely, the probability denoted by unlikely, we cannot have this, so can't say. Or maybe, cannot be determined, whatever you use. The popular protests against the Chinese government are being viewed by the government as an attempt at secession. No. As secession. Why do we have an at? Anyhow. So secession, they want to separate from China, not something that you can arrive at on the basis of the paragraph. Vikram, I will have to check. Unfortunately, I have not looked at that key, but the answer should be D. Overthrow is something that cannot be determined on the basis of the paragraph. Why don't you go ahead and check? I will also, once the session is over, I will also go ahead and check. And if we have erroneously marked E there, well, I'll get it changed. Don't worry. Okay, or maybe. Okay, so with that, let's dive into our next question. So 9th is D. Here is the next one. Another Parajumble. I'll tell you, you guys are of course supposed to write the exam, and I give you all the right kind of advice, but you know what? I fell into this trap of selection approach while going through this particular question. Instead of the elimination approach, and that ended up taking me a lot of time. Okay, Vikram, just go with D in that case. Yeah, I'll also go ahead and get it fixed there. So question number 10, if you do orient yourself, you realize the for that you see here is basically used in that sense of because. In order to justify the for, you either need to have 3 to or you need to have 4 to. So no 3-2 or 4-2, no 3-2 or 4-2. Oh, you do have 3-2, you do have 3-2, no 3-2 or 4-2. So I eventually eliminated A, B and E using this itself. So it was essentially between C and D. And what is the difference? The position of 1. So 1 fortunately starts with hence. Which tells you it is a conclusion. There has to be a premise before it. Now 5 does not act as a premise for 1, but if you combine 5 with 3, 5 with the 3, then 1 can be justified. Then you can arrive at 1. And that is why I eliminated D and chose C. Although, as I said, I adopted this approach after spending a good 2.5 minutes on the question, and suddenly I like, oh, why am I not using the answer choices? Now see, fortunately in my case, it does not make much of a difference. But in your case, those 2.5 minutes do. So please make sure that you remember to use the elimination approach and don't make the mistake that I made while going through this question. Here is the next one. Incorrect. Ooh, subtle. Now, in this particular case, I read all of these. Now, I have, of course, solved a lot of grammar-based questions. I've studied it a lot. I teach it. So things are probably easier for me. But there is one error that I believe all of us should have been able to spot. And that is the error in 6th. We can say that domestic work is not counted. I mean, the subject is work. Work is uncountable. And therefore the verb had to be singular, which means that my answer has to be either C or D. Both of them already have 4. So you know that 4 is also incorrect. So you just need to look at 3 versus 5. So let's look at 3. It starts with listening to diverse point of views. Ooh. This is the noun. It should have been diverse points of view. View is uncountable. Why would you pluralize that in this sense, in this context? Not in every meaning, of course. So 3rd is definitely incorrect. 5th, the globe needs radical change, but nations tend to have narrower perspective. This is correct, which means that the correct answer is C. So just identifying one easy error led to 2 answer choices. And after that, I think you can start taking some chances. Needs a radical change. No, why a radical? The globe needs radical change. I don't think we need a. In fact, in this case, the way change is used here, it is uncountable. And you wouldn't even use an article before an uncountable noun. If you use a or an, not any article, but you cannot use a or an. Think of all those sentences that use the word makeover. We hear this a lot thanks to social media. So what do we call it? I need. So it's there that you'd probably use and it's that impact, that effect which is which is affecting us here, I guess. Okay, here is the next one, which happens to be a passage. Let's see, let's just read it fast so that you are able to revise it a bit and then we can go ahead. Okay, next. Next. So basically summary, which can be thought of as a main idea question. So if you were to look at it, advocating a solution to society, the author is in fact doing the opposite of it. So this contradicts, so is ruled out. B also contradicts, so is ruled out. C, stupidity arises from societal traditions and not from individuals. Now, is this the best summary? Not really, but it is at least true according to the passage. D, the inability to comprehend events occurring around us is very broad, goes beyond the scope of the passage. So you can in a way say this is alien. It brings in addition, so ruled out. Promoting an existing solution to fix a different problem, no. E, I think none of you, okay. So what is wrong with E? Promoting an existing solution to fix a different problem. Is he promoting an existing solution to fix a different problem, or is he saying that, okay, I have a problem, I don't have a solution for it, but I am going to use a solution that was used in a different context. So it is not the problem which is different. You have just one problem. You are borrowing a solution that has come from a different context. It very cleverly distorts what the passage says. And such distortions can at times lead us to choose the answer choice. And that is what makes C the best option for question number 12. And here is 13th. This is the kind of question that XAT is known for, ambiguous answer choices, where the answer cannot be arrived at using selection. Okay, so if you look at the passage, it says that stupidity is not an individual thing, it is a cultural thing. So even if you are somebody who's amazing, you can be stupid because at the end of the day you could have it from the environment, from the surroundings, and that is where D comes into picture. So this is something that can only be inferred. It is not something that is directly stated. So it looked like a specific detail question, but in reality it is more of an inference question. So 13th is D, and here is the last question from the passage. Now this is what we typically call a further application question. So which of the following can best help a leader avoid stupidity? So although it's a further application question, I'd say in the context of the passage, I would probably call it an easy to moderate question instead of calling it a difficult question. So easy, because at the end of the day, where all does stupidity come from, and what are those two key things given in the second and the third paragraph? So C more or less directly points to, sorry, I'm saying C but choosing D. Notice that's the kind of mistake that we at times make when we upload. So wrong answers get uploaded occasionally. So therefore it is C. I think when I looked at the data, I think this is a question that a majority actually found not that challenging. And with that, here is your next passage. Late teens, or maybe was it early 20s, I don't know. So yeah, I read this and I was like, oh, this is something that I know about.
So all these socks for just $4?
Next. Next. So, which of the following can be best concluded from the passage? This is slightly challenging, I'd say, but doable on the whole. This is what makes it cannot be determined. Then B, an urgent look at the space industry is not necessary. This is actually false as per the passage. It says that we are not looking at it urgently because of this reason, but then those pollutants can actually have long-term consequences. So if I were to infer anything, I'd say that, hey, our lack of urgency is misplaced. So I'd actually label B as false. And it is, and C is cannot be determined. It is not the rockets which should not be tethered to Earth but to debris in space. If you look at it, it is given in a different context. A stable tether to Earth remains essential throughout each habitat's life cycle. So what is to be tethered is not the rocket but that habitat, and therefore we'd not be able to arrive at it. And then if you look at E, this is not even mentioned in the passage. This comparison has not even been given. So that is what makes D the best answer choice. In fact, there is this particular part in the passage that says the strongest reason to halt the creation of space debris is the inherent wastefulness of the practice. As it stands, traditional rocket launches are a significant impediment to sustainable space exploration, says the passage. And therefore, this line can very easily be concluded. So 15th, D. Here is the next one. So it is absolutely obsolete. Now the author does want it to change. He wants some innovation to happen here, but it does not mean that it is outdated or it is obsolete. So this is cannot be determined. There is no engineering ingenuity, cannot be determined. I mean, this no bit is probably false. Tremendously profligate. If you're profligate, you are very wasteful with your resources, and the passage actually rather clearly tells us that the strongest reason to halt the creation of space debris is the inherent wastefulness of the practice. So that waste is being generated because of the current technology. So this is true. Dangerous, cannot be determined. Major overhaul in its design components. It requires an overhaul, but does it have to be in the design components? Maybe it is the technology that needs to change, not the components themselves. So identify a trend. If there is a struggle, if there is a challenge specifically with inference questions, you still will enhance the probability of your getting these questions right eventually. And here is the last one based on the passage. This was probably an easy question in this passage, a relatively easy question in this passage. So if you refer to the first couple of paragraphs, I think you would find it easy to arrive at B. So should work. Okay, and with that, D, better designed, and see, best help. You can scroll back to the passage. If you look at D, better designed and engineered rockets. Why would they help you avoid space debris? Better design can probably help you even reduce the pollutant. So it may not directly lead to reduction in the debris, but let me just take you back once. Here. Look at this. This is the only time when the author has shared his preference in terms of the method that reduces space debris. The new tech, etc., has actually been talked about in the context of pollution. So, if you use this, you're guaranteed to eradicate the debris by our atmosphere, and that is where, let's say, that option B becomes an automatic choice. Okay, and with that, here is the last item for the day. Oh, sorry, there was a fill in the blank question as well that I forgot about, and then we'll move over to the next bit. Oof. Anybody who does not read the entire sentence before looking at individual blanks would have faced difficulties in this question. Anybody who reads the entire sentence first before dealing with individual blanks would have found it easy. So, the moral of the story, the lesson of this particular question is, before you start looking at individual blanks, please read the entire sentence or the sentences that are given to you once. So the key here was arguing with a person who agreed with everything that he said. Who agree with everything. So what happens when you talk to such a person? You cannot argue. So this must be a person who wanted to argue, which means that in the first blank it has to be either argumentative or quarrelsome. So the positive words are out. And then if you look at the second blank, it took him little time or a long time. A person who agrees with everything that you say, you cannot argue with him. So it won't take you long to end the conversation, end that process. And that is where little scores over a long. And I think even if you work with the third blank, you would realize that boredom can go victory makes no sense, and therefore C. On the whole, easy if you start with the entire sentence. It still remain easy, but it may end up taking you a little longer if you do not do that. And with that, the last thing that we plan to look at today, and that is the poem that had just 4 lines. Wow, amazing. So look at the first 2 lines. You fit into me like a hook into an eye. A typical start of a love story or a romantic poem, like fit into me. So this tells you that, and if you look at the symbolism involved, it tells you that they were made for each other. It tells you that it is a heterosexual love story. It tells you that there is also a bit of sexual tension in here. But then the moment you move over from here to the next 2 lines, a fish hook, an open eye, and it suddenly brings in a very gory, a very violent image. So it looked like a love story. It looked like a match made in heaven. But the next part tells you that, oh no, that's not how it is. Not only that, you notice a fish hook is not supposed to go in an open eye. A fish hook is meant for fish, not meant for the eye. So this is where you realize that it is not a natural violence. It is unnatural. These 2 things don't match. And moreover, when I read this poem some 4 or 5 times, I realized that you can actually use it as a pun as well. If you're not writing it, if you're just speaking it, you notice this I can also be interpreted as I. So there is this pun involved as well. And this also tells me that the poem is written by a woman. A lot of things. Vedant, not exactly haiku. There is a name for these poems. There are these poems where the third line change. So haiku has a very specific syllable. Haiku is supposed to have 5 lines. And yes, the last line or the last 2 lines are supposed to change, and every line is supposed to have a certain number of syllables. So not exactly an haiku, but yes, I get it that the characteristic of the last line of a haiku, that job is being performed by the last 2 lines here. And here are the questions. So first one, Vedant, not exactly pirate because of that last bit. Because you know that hook and open eye, they are not natural. So won't exactly be a pirate, but yes, a hint of patriarchy, a hint of male violence, a hint of the fact that it is not natural, unlike the first couple of sentences. So in 19th, the problem with A is that they're not perfect. There is violence. And then sometimes joyful, sometimes painful. The last 2 lines take out this part away. If the hook is a fish hook and the eye is an open eye, it won't be joyful. but the first two lines make it appear that it was a match made in heaven, but in reality it was not, and that gets captured best in option C, and therefore we'd opt for C. Look at the symbolism there. Okay, and here is the last question for the day. What do you think would your answer be? All right, so the poem involves two parties, yes, a fish and a hook. So definitely two. One is true, but the hook referred to in the second and the third line are likely to be the same. Are they? The third one is a fish hook, whereas the first one talks about the hook that is used as a fastener in clothes. So they are different. So 2 is not true. So any option with 2 can be ruled out. 1 is true. So the choice is between D and E. The I referred to in the second and the fourth line may not be the same. Absolutely yes. This is also true. The second line is the I that is used on a cloth, and the fourth line I is the literal eye of a person, and therefore D. So in case you still haven't got it, this is the hook. This is the hook and the I referred to in the first two lines. So that is why third is true. So that's where we stop today. If you enjoyed working with me, don't forget to like this session, and here are the next set of sessions for you. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. you'd have this strategy discussion by GB, and a day after a GK marathon that will take you through 100 questions. So make sure that you do attend them without fail, and of course you can go ahead and join our OMAT classes, and don't forget to join us after your XAT exam. So XAT will get over at 5:30. Quite a few of us are writing this exam. The centers are very far away for most of us. So we will try to reach the center by 6:30, 6:45. I hope that at least one of us will reach there by then. So chances are that we may go live by 7 p.m. but to be on the safe side, let's say 7:30. So around 7, latest by 7:30, you'd find us going live with a detailed analysis of the XAT exam that you and I, both of us, must have written. So that's it from me today. I look forward to meeting you in my next session at 12 tomorrow. Until then, keep working hard, keep slaying all these questions the way you have been doing them so far. So go ahead, have fun, and have a great evening ahead. Take care.